Have you ever stopped to wonder how our modern ideas of the universe or the devil or even human nature were actually shaped?
Right. It's a huge question.
I mean, really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
When you picture the devil or hell or the concept of the forbidden fruit, those specific visceral images flashing through your mind, they probably didn't come directly from ancient religious texts.
No, they definitely didn't.
They came from a blind English poet writing in the 1600s. So, welcome to this deep dive into John Milton's epic masterpiece, Paradise Lost.
I am so thrilled we're doing this.
Me too. Today, we are taking a massive stack of source material, 12 books of incredibly dense, magnificent poetry, and we are going to look past the intimidating 17th century language. Our mission is to extract the absolute core substance of this work.
Exactly. We want to map out the theories and the models of the world that it paints.
Right. We want to understand how it physically structures the universe, how it explains the deep, dark psychology of evil, and how it tackles the ultimate question of free will versus destiny.
It is a phenomenal undertaking, and for anyone who might feel a bit intimidated by the idea of 17th century poetry, there is absolutely no need to worry. We are going to synthesize these massive cosmic concepts into clear, understandable models for you.
Yeah, we're going to break it all down.
To give you a bit of context right off the bat, this text is written in what's called blank verse. That means it doesn't rhyme, but it follows a very strict rhythmic heartbeat.
The iambic pentameter.
Yes. And because the author was blind and had to dictate the entire poem to his daughters, it was literally designed to be heard, not just read. It possesses this booming theatrical quality.
It's meant to be spoken aloud.
Totally. And what this text really offers is a comprehensive blueprint of reality as the author envisioned it. It's a psychological thriller. It's a piece of science fiction written long before the genre of science fiction even existed. And it's a profound philosophical treatise all rolled into one.
It's all of those things. But before we really get to the weeds, it is important to lay down a quick ground rule for our discussion today.
Yes, very important.
While the source material we are examining is obviously deeply rooted in theological concepts and biblical narratives, our goal today is simply to impartially explore the ideas and the world models contained in the text.
Right.
We're looking at this as a brilliant, complex architectural construct. We're not here to endorse any specific religious viewpoint or make theological claims. You, as the listener, are the third person in this fascinating conversation, and we invite you to look at this purely as an incredible map of the human condition.
I think that is the perfect way to approach it. We are looking at the blueprints. And to understand the blueprints, we really have to start with the setting.
But the setting here isn't just a country or a single planet. It is literally everything, the entire cosmos.
The whole thing.
When we think of the universe today, our minds immediately go to the images from the James Webb Space Telescope, right? Expanding space, billions of galaxies, dark matter, this endless cold horizontal stretch.
Yeah, a very modern horizontal view.
But the physical model of the universe presented in this text operates on a completely different paradigm. It is a vertical moral geography.
Vertical and moral. Space and morality are intimately tied together here.
Exactly. At the absolute top of everything is heaven. The text describes it as being full of unapproached light.
That phrase, unapproached light, is crucial. In this universe, heaven isn't just a place with nice weather. It is the physical embodiment of ultimate order and pure energy.
It's blindingly perfect.
Right. It's described with these incredibly vivid architectural terms. Opal towers, battlements of living sapphire, and pavements that shine like a sea of jasper. It is the apex of existence.
And in this vertical model, if heaven is at the absolute top, hell is at the absolute bottom.
It's far down as you can possibly go.
The text describes hell with some of the most enduring, terrifying imagery in all of Western literature. It is not merely a place of fire. The text calls it a dungeon horrible that flames like one great furnace.
But here is the brilliant paradox that the author introduces. From those flames, there is no light, but rather darkness visible.
I want to pause right there because darkness visible is one of those phrases that just sticks in your brain forever.
It's unforgettable.
It almost breaks the laws of physics. Fire is supposed to illuminate, but this fire casts a shadow. What does it actually mean for darkness to be visible?
It is a terrifying concept. It implies that the darkness isn't just an absence of light, It is an active, oppressive presence.
Like a heavy fog of shadow.
Exactly. The fire doesn't allow the inhabitants to see anything comforting. It serves only to discover sights of woe. It illuminates their misery without providing any of the warmth or clarity that light normally brings.
That sounds miserable.
It's a place of a fiery deluge fed with ever-burning sulfur, where the fallen angels are bound in what the text calls adamantine chains.
Adamantine. That's a great word we don't use much anymore. It basically means unbreakable, right? Something diamond-like in its absolute hardness.
Exactly. It comes from the Greek root for invincible or untamable. These chains aren't just heavy iron. They are philosophically and physically unbreakable because they are forged from the consequences of the angel's own actions.
Wow.
Hell is placed as far removed from the Creator and the light of heaven, the text notes, as from the center of the earth to the utmost pole. It is the absolute bottom of reality.
So you have this structure, heaven at the very top, radiating order, and hell at the very bottom, radiating this oppressive, visible darkness. But what is the space in between them?
It's definitely not empty space.
Right. It isn't just an empty vacuum like we imagine space today. It is chaos. And the way the text describes chaos is incredibly wild. It's this vast, boiling, unformed space.
The text calls it the womb of nature and perhaps her grave.
The womb and the grave. It's an illimitable ocean without bound or dimension where time and place are completely lost. And inside this chaos, you have these four elemental champions constantly warring for mastery.
Hot, cold, moist, and dry.
Yeah, they are ruled over by an entity called the Anarch, Old Chaos, and his consort, Night. It sounds like pure elemental anarchy.
It is the raw material of existence before order is applied to it. And it's out of this chaotic, terrifying abyss that the New World is eventually created.
And we should clarify that.
Right. When we say the New World in the context of this text, we don't mean the Americas or a new continent on Earth. We mean our entire universe.
Earth, our sun, the stars, the planets, the entire galaxy.
Yes. This whole universal sphere is created entirely after the rebel angels fall into hell. And here's where the model gets truly fascinating. This new universe is suspended from the floor of heaven by a golden chain.
Golden chain.
Yeah. To someone looking from the vast, dark distance of chaos, our entire universe, everything we know and can observe, appears as small as a star of smallest magnitude close by the moon.
Wait, so our entire universe is just a tiny pendant hanging off the floor of heaven?
That's the visual, yes.
That makes humanity seem incredibly insignificant. How does the text reconcile that massive, intimidating scale with the idea that humans are the center of the Creator's attention?
That is the beauty of the model. The physical smallness of the universe emphasizes the intimacy and the specific care of its creation. It doesn't need to be physically massive to be morally significant.
That makes sense.
What this architecture establishes is that physics and morality are essentially the exact same thing. Proximity to the top, to the Creator, equals literal light, literal order, and absolute goodness.
And distance.
Distance from the top equals literal darkness, chaos, and misery. Falling in this universe is both a literal gravitational pull and a moral gravitational pull.
They literally sink.
Exactly. When the angels rebel, they don't just lose a military conflict, they physically lose their buoyancy in the light. They fall for 9 straight days through the abyss of chaos.
9 days of falling.
The physical weight of their sin literally drags them down to the bottom of reality. It's a universe where the spiritual state of a being directly dictates their physical location and their physical weight.
Sin literally makes you heavy. That is such a powerful way to model morality. And before we move past the physical structure of the cosmos, I want to bring up this incredibly bizarre, almost satirical detail mapped right onto the edge of the universe.
Oh, the paradise of fools.
Yes. On the very outer shell of our universe, this hard, physical exterior protecting us from the boiling ocean of chaos, there is a place that the text calls the paradise of fools, or the limbo of vanity.
It's such a strange and wonderful detail.
It's this wild concept where vain things, hypocrites, and people who built their hopes on empty, foolish things on earth end up. They're blown around by violent crosswinds forever. It feels like such a departure from the high drama of heaven and hell. Why include this cosmic dustbin?
It is a striking moment of almost cosmic comedy, and it serves a very specific purpose in the text's overarching model. The text specifically places the builders of the Tower of Babel, vanity-obsessed philosophers, and religious hypocrites there.
People full of hot air.
Precisely. These are people who think they are ascending to heaven through their own artificial, self-serving means. And right as they reach the gate, A crosswind blows them into a devious air, fluttering them into rags and blowing them over the backside of the world.
It's a great visual.
It demonstrates that in this universe, vanity has a physical destination. It's a way of saying that not all sins have the dark majesty of Satan's rebellion. Some sins are just empty, pathetic, and fundamentally foolish.
It's like a 17th century burn on superficiality.
It really is.
And there's another incredible moment related to the cosmos, specifically in Book 8. Adam is hanging out with the archangel Raphael, and Adam starts asking him about astronomy. He's looking up at the sky, noticing the movements of the stars, and he wants to know, does the Earth move, or does the sun move?
A very loaded question for the time.
Incredibly loaded. To give you, the listener, some context, when this text was written, this was the most dangerous, cutting-edge scientific debate of the era. The Ptolemaic model, which said the Earth was the center of everything, was clashing with the Copernican model, which Galileo championed, proving the Earth actually revolved around the sun.
And Galileo suffered greatly for that.
He was literally put under house arrest by the Inquisition for this. So Adam is essentially asking Raphael to settle the greatest scientific debate of the 1600s, and Raphael's response is basically, don't worry about it.
Yes, Raphael's advice is a cornerstone of the text's model for human knowledge. He tells Adam, be lowly wise. He doesn't say that the earth moves, and he doesn't say that the sun moves.
He just dodges the question.
Well, he says that the Creator has purposefully placed the heavens far enough away that earthly sight might err if it presumes to know too much. He suggests that God might actually laugh at the complex, convoluted mathematical models humans will eventually invent to try and explain the stars.
Which is a pretty bold thing to write during the scientific revolution. Is the text anti-science? Is it saying humanity should just stay ignorant?
Not exactly anti-science, but it's deeply concerned with the misapplication of human intellect. If we connect this to the broader psychological model, Raphael is warning against obsessing over mechanisms that are completely beyond human scale.
Because it's a distraction.
Exactly, because that obsession distracts from the immediate, tangible reality of living a good, moral life on the ground. The boundary set on curiosity isn't there to keep humanity stubbornly ignorant. It's there to keep them focused on what actually matters to their daily existence.
Keep your eyes on your own work, basically.
Right. Whether the sun is the center or the earth is the center, Raphael says, leave those matters to the Creator. Focus on your own mind, your own garden, your own relationships.
So we have this massive, rigid physical structure hanging by a golden chain, complete with an outer shell for vain fools and a sky that we aren't supposed to overanalyze. But a map is only as interesting as the people navigating it. If heaven represents ultimate gravity and order, how does a being actually go about breaking that gravity? We have to look at the entity who decides to traverse this whole map, which brings us to the psychology and anatomy of evil. We have to talk about Satan.
The great antagonist.
The text's model of evil through this character is completely groundbreaking. He is not the cartoon monster with a red pitchfork and goat hooves that we often see in pop culture. He is a deeply complex, articulate, psychological being.
He is arguably one of the most sophisticated literary creations in history. The text establishes early on that he is driven by two immense consuming forces, obdurate pride and steadfast hate.
Obdurate pride.
Yes, stubborn, unyielding pride. When he first wakes up on the burning lake in hell, he is in absolute physical agony. But what is fascinating is how his mind immediately goes to work, rationalizing his defeat and reframing his new horrific reality.
He spins the narrative.
He does. He establishes his core philosophy almost immediately with the famous declaration, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. That has to be one of the most iconic lines ever written. That sounds so defiant, almost heroic in a dark way. It's the ultimate statement of absolute autonomy.
It sounds heroic until you examine what it actually means.
Right. It feels like a very isolated mindset. Is he just down there alone ruling over the fire, or is there a larger hierarchy of evil at play here?
Oh, there is a deeply disturbing hierarchy, and the text uses allegory to explain exactly how this isolated mindset reproduces itself. When Satan eventually breaks off the burning lake and makes his way to the gates of hell to escape, he encounters two monstrous figures guarding the way out.
Sin and death.
These are sin and death. The encounter provides a horrifying and brilliant explanation of how evil operates. When Satan arrives, he initially doesn't even recognize these beings. The female figure, Sin, has to explain their shared twisted history.
And this is where the text gets incredibly graphic.
It does. Sin tells Satan that back in heaven, when he was first conceiving his rebellion, When the thought of betraying the Creator first formed in his mind, he felt a dizzying, blinding pain in his head.
A cosmic headache.
Suddenly, the left side of his head opened up, and she, Sin, sprang forth, fully formed and armed.
Which is a direct, dark mirror of the Greek myth of Athena, springing from the head of Zeus, right? But instead of a goddess of wisdom, Satan gives birth to the embodiment of transgression.
Precisely. It is a perversion of wisdom. When Sin first appeared, she was a beautiful, shining goddess. And Satan, looking at her, became enamored with his own perfect image reflected in her. He fell in love with his own rebellious thought.
He fell in love with himself, essentially.
Yes, they engaged in a secret, incestuous relationship right there in heaven.
That is deeply unsettling right off the bat. The text is literally modeling that evil is essentially narcissistic. It loves itself.
Exactly. From that union, Sin became pregnant. After the war in heaven, she was cast down to hell alongside the other rebels and given the key to the gates. There, she gave birth in excruciating agony to her son, Death.
And Death is described in a very specific way.
He is. Death is described not as a skeleton, but as a dark, amorphous shadow, fierce and terrible, wearing a kingly crown. And here's where the allegory becomes truly grim, illustrating the self-destructive nature of this path.
It gets worse.
Death, driven by an insatiable innate lust and famine, immediately assaults his mother, Sin. From this second, violent, incestuous union, Sin gives birth to a pack of yelling monsters, hellhounds.
And these hounds don't just run off. They stay with her in the most horrific way possible.
They do. The text describes how these hounds constantly creep back into her womb to gnaw on her bowels for their repast, only to burst forth again in a cycle of endless conscious terror and pain.
It is so incredibly visceral. I mean, it's a body horror movie inside an epic poem. But what is the underlying psychological model here? What is the text trying to tell us about the nature of evil?
What's crucial to understand here is that in this model, evil is fundamentally uncreative. It is purely destructive, parasitic, and self-consuming. Satan creates sin out of his own proud thoughts. He then copulates with his own sin to produce death. Death then violates sin to produce endless, gnawing torments.
It's an endless cycle.
The model here is a closed, incestuous loop that constantly degrades and devours itself. It creates nothing truly new. It only twists, perverts, and inflicts endless pain on its own originators.
That's horrifying.
Sin even tells Satan that death would eventually devour her, his own mother, if he didn't know that doing so would mean his own end. It is a terrifying psychological model of how negative, destructive habits and choices consume the person who makes them. Evil is a parasite that eventually eats its host.
That brings us to what might be the most profound psychological moment in the entire text. Satan manages to get past sin and death. He navigates the boiling ocean of chaos. He lands on the outer shell of our universe, and he flies down to Earth.
It makes it.
He lands on Mount Niphates, looking out at the newly created, perfect Garden of Eden. He has physically escaped the chains. He has escaped the burning lake. By all accounts, his prison break is a success. But instead of feeling victorious, he experiences a crushing, terrifying realization. He realizes that escaping the physical coordinates of hell didn't actually free him.
This is the absolute turning point for his character, and it introduces one of the most powerful psychological insights of the era. He looks up at the sun, which reminds him of the shining glory he lost, and his bravado cracks.
The mask slips.
He begins to reflect on his rebellion. He admits, in a moment of private, devastating despair, that the Creator didn't deserve his rebellion, that God's searching was not hard. He understands exactly what he threw away.
But he doesn't go back.
No. The crushing weight of his pride, the fear of losing face in front of the angels he led into ruin, prevents him from repenting. And then comes the chilling realization. He says, "Which way I fly is hell, myself am hell. And in the lowest deep, a lower deep still threatening to devour me opens wide, to which the hell I suffer seems a heaven."
Myself am hell. That line gives me goosebumps. He realizes that hell isn't just a zip code at the bottom of the universe. It's a state of mind. He carries it with him.
He is his own torture chamber.
If we look at this through a modern lens, it sounds incredibly similar to concepts in cognitive behavioral therapy. The idea that cognitive distortions and deeply ingrained negative thought patterns trap individuals in a mental prison, regardless of their physical surroundings.
It's a striking parallel.
You could be standing in absolute paradise, looking at the most beautiful garden ever created. But if your mind is consumed by envy and pride, you are experiencing pure torment.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. The text's psychological model argues exactly that. Evil and suffering are fundamentally internal states. Satan realizes that even if he could be magically transported back to heaven and pardoned, his pride would just cause him to chafe against the rules and rebel all over again.
He'd just start another war.
Exactly. He is trapped in a prison of his own construction. Realizing that he cannot escape his own mind and absolutely refusing to submit, he makes a conscious, chilling choice to fully embrace his corrupted nature. He says, "So farewell, hope, and with hope farewell, fear. Farewell, remorse. All good to me is lost. Evil, be thou my good."
Evil be thou my good. It's the moment he stops pretending he has a righteous cause.
Yeah.
He drops the illusion of being a misunderstood freedom fighter and fully commits to being the villain.
He leans all the way in.
He weaponizes his own despair. And here is where the text uses a brilliant visual technique to track this moral degradation. It shows us his physical degradation. Remember, he starts out in the beginning of the text as this towering, magnificent archangel.
And radiant and massive.
The poetry describes his shield hanging on his shoulders like the moon. He looks like a tower. He has scars of thunder on his face, but he still looks like a ruined god. But as he commits more and more to his petty evil mission on Earth, he literally shrinks and degrades in physical form, doesn't he?
It is a masterful visual representation of spiritual decay. To get onto Earth undetected, he first disguises himself as a stripling cherub, a young, lesser angel to fool the angelic guards. He has to shrink his majesty.
He has to make himself small.
When he finally gets into the Garden of Eden, he leaps over the wall and sits on the Tree of Life. But he doesn't sit there as an angel. He shapes himself like a cormorant, a large, predatory seabird.
From an angel to a bird.
He then stalks Adam and Eve through the brush, disguised as a lion and then a tiger. Later, when the angelic guards catch him whispering in Eve's ear while she sleeps, trying to plant bad dreams, he is squatting on the ground in the shape of a toad.
A toad. From an archangel whose shield is the size of the moon to a literal toad squatting in the dirt and whispering in someone's ear. Such a pathetic image.
And finally, of course, the text brings him to the literal snake, crawling on its belly in the dirt. Satan even admits to himself, when he is forced to take on the form of the serpent to enact his final temptation, how degrading the whole process is.
He hates it.
He laments, "O foul descent, that I, who erst contended with gods to sit the highest, am now constrained into a beast, and mixed with bestial slime, this essence to incarnate and imbrute." He recognizes his own fall, but his obsessive desire for revenge forces him lower and lower.
It's a steep drop.
The model is unmistakable. Malice, envy, and spite do not elevate you. They do not make you a dark king. They force you to crawl in the slime.
So we have this profound psychological model of evil as a self-consuming, degrading choice. But that raises a massive, glaring question. The Creator is watching all of this happen. He sees Satan break out of hell.
He sees everything.
He watches him fly through chaos. He sees him land in the garden as a cormorant. He knows exactly what Satan is going to do. If you are an all-powerful Creator, how do you justify allowing that choice to exist in the first place? Why let the snake into the garden?
This takes us into the heaviest philosophical lifting of the entire text, the theory of free will and divine justice. In Book 3, the text breaks away from the action to give us a direct dialogue from God, sitting on his throne, looking down at the newly created universe.
Taking a step back from the narrative.
This scene serves as the text's ultimate, rigorous defense of its own worldview. God points out Satan flying toward Earth to his son, and he states plainly and without hesitation that Satan will succeed. Humanity will be deceived, and they will fall.
So he knows it's a done deal.
But then God addresses the core question of blame. He asks, whose fault? Whose but his own? I made him just and right, sufficient to have stood, though free to fall.
Sufficient to have stood, though free to fall. That feels like the defining thesis statement of this entire universe. But I think a lot of listeners might struggle with the logic here. If God knows they're going to fall before they even do it, isn't the game rigged? How does the text separate foreknowledge from predestination?
The text meticulously outlines a model that untangles knowing from causing. God argues if I foreknew, foreknowledge had no influence on their fault, which had no less proved certain unforeknown.
How do we visualize that?
A helpful modern analogy might be watching a recorded football game where you already know the final score. Your knowledge of the outcome doesn't force the quarterback to throw an interception in the third quarter. The player is still making the choice in their own present moment.
You're just observing from outside their time.
In this model, God exists outside of the timeline, observing all moments simultaneously, but the actors within the timeline are still completely authoring their own actions.
Okay, that makes sense. But it still leaves the deeper question. Why make them capable of throwing the interception at all?
Hmm.
If you are building a universe from scratch, why not just make angels and humans perfectly good? Hardwire them for obedience so that they literally can't mess up and ruin everything.
The text anticipates that exact question, and it provides a very specific, beautiful philosophical answer. God argues that without the capacity for free will, concepts like obedience, faith, and love are completely meaningless.
Because it wouldn't be a choice.
He asks the heavenly court, what proof could these creations give of true allegiance if they only do what they must do and not what they want to do? If humans and angels were programmed to be good, they wouldn't be moral agents. They would be automatons or robots executing a script.
They'd just be machines.
God says that such forced obedience would be useless and vain, serving necessity, not him. The underlying model asserts that freedom is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for genuine love. You cannot have real love if the subject does not have the profound, dangerous ability to choose not to love.
It's a huge risk.
The risk of the fall, the risk of all the suffering that follows, is presented as the necessary price for the existence of genuine, freely given love.
It's a universe that prioritizes the authenticity of choice over the safety of perfection. And let's unpack how this concept plays out in the narrative with a really great contrast from the text. Earlier, we talked about how Satan had a council in hell.
A demonic parliament.
Right. He gathers his top generals to debate strategy. Moloch wants open, violent war. Belial wants to just wait it out in peaceful sloth. Mammon wants to mine hell for gold and build their own empire. And Beelzebub suggests they go corrupt the new world. It's essentially a council of sabotage and self-interest.
Every demon for himself.
Well, right after God gives this speech about free will, we get a mirror image, a council in heaven. God has established that humanity will fall, and he declares the absolute law of justice. Treason against the high supremacy of heaven carries a strict penalty. He demands a death for a death to balance the cosmic scales. And then he asks the angels, who among you will be mortal to redeem man's crime? Who will pay the price?
And the response from the heavenly host is stunning. It is absolute silence. All the choirs of heaven stand mute. None of the angels dare to take on the deadly forfeiture. The weight of the justice demanded is too heavy for any created being to bear.
The tension is incredible. And then the son steps up. He offers his own life as a ransom. He says, behold me then. Me for him. Life for life I offer. On me let thine anger fall. It's essentially a model of cosmic economics.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it.
The text is balancing the scales of absolute rigid justice with the mechanism of ultimate mercy. Justice requires a payment for a broken law. You can't just ignore the rules or the universe falls apart, but love and mercy provide a substitute to make that payment.
It is the text's profound resolution to the paradox of a deity who is modeled as simultaneously perfectly just and perfectly merciful. The son's voluntary sacrifice mirrors and completely undoes Satan's voluntary rebellion.
It's the exact opposite choice.
Satan chose to elevate himself at the expense of others, bringing death. The son chooses to lower himself for the sake of others, bringing life. The entire cosmic scale is balanced perfectly on the fulcrum of free will. One being freely chooses ruin, another freely chooses redemption.
So we've seen the mechanics of the stars, we've dissected the psychology of the devil, and we've watched the cosmic scales of justice balance in heaven. But how does this model actually play out on the ground, in the dirt, between two actual people? How does a perfectly happy, rational human being make the decision to break the universe?
We have to zoom in on Eden.
Let's look at the earthly model. What is life actually like for humanity before the fall? What is paradise?
A critical, often misunderstood point the text makes is that paradise is not a place of idle lounging or perpetual vacation. Adam and Eve are not just lying around on clouds eating peeled grapes.
They aren't just relaxing all day.
No, the text heavily emphasizes that they have sweet gardening labor. They are tasked with pruning the vines, managing the rapid overgrowth of the fertile earth, and maintaining order. Work in this model is a fundamental part of perfection, not a punishment.
That shifts the perspective a lot.
Punishment only comes much later when work becomes painful, sweat-inducing toil. Here, labor is purposeful, dignified, and deeply fulfilling.
And within this working paradise, the text establishes a very strict hierarchy. This is absolutely crucial for understanding how the fall happens mechanically. Everything in this universe is ordered. God is above the angels, angels are above humans, humans are above the animals.
It's a great chain of being.
But there's also an internal hierarchy within the human mind, and specifically between Adam and Eve. The text explicitly states, He for God only, she for God in him.
Yes, the text operates on a deeply traditional patriarchal model, which reflects the 17th century period in which it was written. But if we look beyond the gender dynamics of the era, it represents a profound philosophical hierarchy of the mind.
Reason versus emotion.
In this psychological model, Adam is heavily associated with reason or intellect, while Eve is associated more with appetite, beauty, and emotion. The ideal state of human existence, according to the text, is when reason firmly rules over appetite. As long as the intellect is guiding the desires, the system functions perfectly.
The ship has a captain.
The fall, therefore, is modeled not just as a simple failure to follow a rule about a piece of fruit, but as a catastrophic inversion of this natural internal hierarchy.
And the text gives us a fascinating glimpse into the vulnerability of that internal hierarchy right at the beginning of Eve's life. I want to talk about the psychological detail of Eve's creation because it is stunning.
It's one of the best scenes in the epic.
When she first wakes up into existence, she doesn't know what she is or where she is. She hears a murmuring sound of waters, walks over to a liquid plain, and looks down into the smooth, clear lake. She sees a shape within the watery gleam and falls completely in love with her own reflection.
Like Narcissus.
Exactly. She literally pines with vain desire for her own image, preferring it to Adam, until a divine voice has to intervene, guide her away, and explain to her what her reflection is.
It is a breathtaking psychological insight by the author. Long before the concept of narcissism was clinically defined in modern psychology, the text gives Eve this deeply vulnerable moment. She is naturally drawn to her own beauty.
It's an innate pull.
While she does eventually leave the lake and accept Adam as her partner, the scene establishes a latent vulnerability. It hints at an inherent human capacity for vanity and a desire for self-elevation. If we want a modern parallel, think about the culture of digital narcissism in social media today.
Our own liquid plains.
How easily we become captivated by the echo chamber of our own curated image. Satan, who, as we've established, is a master psychologist and manipulator, recognizes this exact vulnerability perfectly.
So let's break down the actual mechanics of the temptation.
Yeah.
How does the perfect crime go down in paradise? It actually starts with a debate about work. Eve wants to divide their labors for the day.
She wants to be more efficient.
She argues, essentially, we are not getting enough gardening done because we keep talking, smiling at each other, and getting distracted. If we split up and work on different sides of the garden, we'll be much more productive. Adam warns her. He says, there is a malicious foe lurking around. We've been warned by the angels. We are vastly safer if we stay together.
But Eve pushes back.
She feels slightly insulted. She feels Adam doesn't trust her to stand firm on her own, that her virtue hasn't been tested. And Adam, respecting her free will because, as we learn from God's monologue, forced obedience is meaningless, reluctantly lets her go.
And that separation is exactly what Satan has been waiting for. He approaches her in the form of a serpent, but he doesn't just hiss at her to eat the fruit. He doesn't use magic or brute force. He uses an incredibly sophisticated, multi-layered rhetorical argument.
It is a masterclass in manipulation.
It really is. He begins by heavily flattering her, addressing her as sovereign of creatures, universal dame. He feeds that latent vanity we saw at the lake, making her feel underappreciated in her current station. Then he presents his core deceptive argument.
The bake.
He claims that he, a mere snake, ate the fruit of the forbidden tree, and instead of dying, he gained the power of speech and human intellect.
It's the ultimate false advertisement. It's a sleazy sales pitch. He's saying, look at me. I was a dumb animal crawling in the dirt. I ate this specific fruit, and now I'm talking to you and reasoning like a human. Imagine what it will do for you. If it elevated me from animal to human, it will elevate you from human to divine.
Exactly. And to close the sale, he attacks the character and the motives of the creator. He asks Eve, why would God forbid this? He tells her that God is just trying to awe them with fear to keep them low and ignorant.
He paints God as a tyrant.
He frames the prohibition not as a protective boundary designed for their safety, but as an oppressive limitation designed to prevent her from reaching her full potential.
Yeah.
He promises that if she eats, her eyes will be opened and she will be as gods, knowing both good and evil.
And Eve buys it. She eats the fruit not just because she's hungry, but to gain power, to gain status, to become like a god.
Yeah.
She allows appetite and ambition to completely overrule her reason. But Adam's fall is completely different, isn't it? When he finds out what she did, his internal hierarchy breaks down in a totally different way.
Completely different and profoundly tragic. When Eve brings him the fruit and tells him what she has done, Adam is horrified. He is struck mute. The text says he drops the garland of flowers he was weaving for her hair, and the flowers fade.
That visual is heartbreaking.
He knows instantly that she is ruined, that she has brought death upon herself. But in that moment, his internal hierarchy shatters. He allows his earthly love, his overwhelming, consuming passion for Eve, to overrule his reason and his obedience to the Creator. He says, "I with thee have fixed my lot, flesh of thy flesh." He chooses to die with her rather than live without her.
To a modern ear, that sounds incredibly romantic. I can't live without you, so I'll eat the poisoned apple. We go down together. It sounds like the ultimate love story. But in the context of the text's model, it is the ultimate failure.
It is. If we connect this back to the broader philosophical architecture, the text is demonstrating that idolatry, putting anything, even the profound love of your spouse, above the Creator and the universal order, shatters the system.
It breaks the chain.
Eve allows ambition to overrule reason. Adam allows passion to overrule obedience. In both cases, the proper hierarchy is flipped upside down. The mind revolts against its own proper structure.
And the immediate aftermath of this internal revolt is brutal. The universe reacts physically to the breach. When Eve eats, the text says, "Earth felt the wound, and nature from her seat, sighing through all her works, gave signs of woe." When Adam eats, earth trembled from her entrails, and nature gave a second groan.
The physical world shudders.
But the psychological change within the humans is even more immediate and jarring. They don't suddenly gain divine, serene wisdom like the snake promised. Their first reaction is pure burning lust.
The text notes that their eyes are indeed open, but what they see is their own physical nakedness, not with the pure innocence they had before, but with guilty shame. Their minds are described as a region in storms.
A complete mental breakdown.
Understanding and will are now completely in subjection to sensual appetite. They wake up from their lustful, intoxicating encounter and the hangover sets in. They immediately begin blaming each other. Adam furiously blames Eve for wandering off in the first place. Eve bitterly blames Adam for not being firm enough to stop her, pointing out that as the head, he should have commanded her to stay.
It is the birth of the toxic relationship. The perfect harmony is gone, replaced by mutual recrimination, anger, and deep-seated shame.
They are completely alienated from each other.
The universe is broken. The human mind is broken. The perfect ecosystem is shattered. The blueprint is effectively ruined. So how does the text model the consequences and the path forward from such absolute disaster? This takes us to the aftermath, the long game of redemption. The physical world changes instantly to reflect the moral failure, right?
Yes. The cosmic architecture we mapped out at the beginning undergoes a massive, terrifying renovation. Because sin has now officially entered the human world, sin and death, who have been waiting hungrily at the gates of hell, feel a new, sympathetic, gravitational pull toward Earth.
They sense the change.
They literally construct a massive paved highway, a sprawling bridge over the boiling ocean of chaos, connecting hell directly to Earth's orbit. Evil now has a permanent, easy thoroughfare into the human realm. The isolation of the universe is gone.
It's an infrastructural nightmare. The dark forces have built a superhighway straight to our front door, and the Earth itself undergoes violent changes. The angels are ordered by God to physically alter the mechanics of the universe.
The text specifically mentions the angels pushing oblique the centric globe, tilting the Earth's axis. Before the fall, the model suggests a perpetual mild spring. Now, because of the tilt, we have extreme, parching summer heat and freezing, desolate winter cold.
The seasons are introduced as a punishment.
Storms, hurricanes, and harsh weather are introduced. And it's not just the weather. The animal kingdom fractures. The animals, which used to play peacefully together, suddenly feel the pangs of violent appetite and begin hunting, terrifying, and devouring each other.
Nature goes to war with itself.
The internal psychological discord in the human mind is instantly mirrored by the external bloody discord in nature.
Adam sees all this happening around him, and he falls into a devastating, crushing depression. He lies on the cold ground through the night, wishing for death. He starts spiraling, questioning the justice of it all. He asks, "Why should my countless descendants have to suffer because I ate a piece of fruit?"
The guilt is crushing him.
He says, "What can I increase or multiply, but curses on my head?" It's a profound existential crisis. He wishes he could just return to dust. Eve, seeing him in such profound agony, suggests a drastically logical but bleak solution.
It's a very dark moment.
She says, "Let's just stop having children. If life is going to be this hard, let's end the human race with us. Or, better yet, let's take our own lives right now and end the misery before it gets passed on to anyone else."
This conversation is a crucial pivot point for the text's model of redemption. Adam hears Eve's desperate suggestion of suicide, and it snaps him out of his self-pitying despair. He realizes that destroying themselves would just be handing Satan the ultimate complete victory.
It would be giving up completely.
He shifts from blaming Eve and blaming God to taking responsibility. He remembers a vague prophecy that was spoken during their judgment that Eve's seed would eventually bruise the serpent's head. He recognizes that there is a long game at play.
He sees a sliver of hope.
He says to Eve, instead of dying or fighting against our punishment, let us fall to our knees, confess our faults, and pray for forgiveness. This introduces the fundamental mechanism of redemption in this model repentance. The text argues that the only way out of the hell of your own making is through genuine humility and accepting absolute responsibility for your actions.
So they pray, and their prayers are heard. God sends the archangel Michael down to evict them from paradise. They can't stay in the garden anymore, but before they leave, Michael does something fascinating. He takes Adam up to a high hill and gives him a vision of the future.
It's a prophetic fast forward.
It's essentially a fast forward through the entire scope of human history. Adam sees his son Cain murder his other son Abel. He sees the rise of horrifying diseases, war, and corruption. He sees the Great Flood wiping out almost everything. It is a relentless, bleak parade of human misery.
It is incredibly heavy. Michael shows Adam that human history will be a cyclical pattern of failure, tyranny, and destruction. He shows him Nimrod building the Tower of Babel, establishing brutal tyranny over free men. He shows the Israelites continually failing to uphold their covenants.
It's just disaster after disaster.
But the vision serves a very specific stabilizing purpose. It traces the lineage of humanity all the way up through the chaos to the eventual savior. It shows Adam that while human effort will continually fail due to the deep corruption introduced by the fall, divine rescue will continually intervene, culminating in the ultimate sacrifice we discussed earlier, where the Son pays the ultimate price to balance the scales.
And this leads to what I think is the most mind-bending philosophical concept in the text, known as the Felix Culpa, or the fortunate fall. After seeing the whole bloody beautiful scope of history and the final ultimate redemption, Adam is struck with absolute wonder. He essentially says, I don't know whether I should repent of my sin or rejoice that my sin is going to produce an even greater good than if I had never sinned at all.
Oh, goodness infinite, goodness immense, that all this good of evil shall produce, and evil turn to good, more wonderful than that which by creation first brought forth light out of darkness.
It's a staggering paradigm shift.
The text proposes that a universe where humans fall, experience deep suffering, learn from their profound mistakes, and are ultimately redeemed through radical love and sacrifice is actually a richer, better, more profound universe than one where they just stayed innocently, safely gardening forever.
The darkness gives the light meaning.
The darkness allows the light to shine brighter. The direct experience of evil makes the eventual hard-won triumph of goodness infinitely more meaningful.
It's a wild, beautiful reframing of a tragedy. And then we get to the final image of the text, which strips away all the cosmic battles and celestial architecture and leaves us with something surprisingly grounded and intimate. The Archangel Michael leads Adam and Eve down from the hill to the eastern gate. Behind them, the gate is closed, guarded by a flaming sword. Paradise is officially lost.
Door is locked forever.
They drop a few natural tears, but they wipe them soon. And the text ends with these lines. The world was all before them, where to choose their place of rest, and providence their guide. They hand in hand with wandering steps and slow, through Eden took their solitary way.
It is widely considered one of the most beautiful and poignant endings in the English language. They are no longer in paradise, but they are together. They are walking out into the messy, painful, unpredictable reality of human history.
Just two people facing the unknown.
They are solitary, facing a hostile world, but they have providence as their guide. The poem transitions seamlessly from a cosmic, mythic epic to the intimate, challenging reality of the daily human condition. It is a profoundly hopeful model, despite the immense, tragic loss that preceded it.
So after parsing through thousands of lines of blank verse, what does this all mean for us today? We've just taken a massive journey through the architecture of a 17th century cosmos. We've gone from the mechanics of the stars and the boiling elements of chaos down to the exact microsecond. A human mind rationalizes a terrible decision.
We covered a lot of ground.
This text gives us a complete blueprint of a universe where free will is the heaviest, most dangerous burden you can carry, but it asserts that it is the only thing that makes genuine love and meaning possible.
Exactly. The enduring value of Paradise Lost is that even if you strip away the theology and the outdated 17th century astronomy, the text stands as a profoundly accurate, challenging model of human psychology.
It asks hard questions of the reader.
It asks you to constantly evaluate your own internal hierarchy. How often is your own reason overpowered by your appetite? How often do you rationalize a destructive, selfish choice simply because it feeds your vanity or your immediate desire? And most importantly, it challenges you to recognize when you are stubbornly building your own internal heavens and hells.
That's the real takeaway here. You don't need to believe in a literal golden chain hanging from a literal sapphire heaven to see yourself reflected in Adam or Eve or even in Satan's struggles. Which brings us to a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day.
It's something that really sticks with you.
We spent a lot of time on Satan's famous realization, the mind is its own place. He proudly declared that believing it gave him absolute, untouchable freedom to defy the universe. He thought that as long as he ruled his own mind, he was truly free.
But he was completely wrong.
As the text brilliantly proves, that very same mind, severed from anything greater than itself, became his inescapable, eternal prison. It begs a profound question for all of us living today. In our modern world, we relentlessly pursue total independence. We are told constantly that we should be the absolute, unchallenged rulers of our own lives and our own truth.
The ultimate autonomy.
But at what point does that fierce, unyielding independence, that refusal to serve or connect with anything outside of our own desires, turn into our own personal, isolated hell?
That is the question you're left with.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.